So hey, this was actually good. Maybe my expectations were so low because, in the trailers and in the promotion material and in the photos and in all this media bullshit, pushing diversity and LGBTQ, LMNOP agenda and all that nonsense, and oh look, it's the first black female lead and all that nonsense, as if it's something new and something exciting, when Star Trek and sci-fi in general has done this shit for 50 years and it's really nothing special. And all of that stuff, all the promotion, all the trailers and the ads and the photos and everything and the interviews and all these SJW, neo-feminist, left-leaning articles all made it out to be what it really isn't. So maybe it's because of that my expectations were really low, so that I was surprised when it wasn't terrible. So in the end, maybe it isn't really that good. It's just that my expectations were so low that I was surprised of it not completely sucking, but maybe. But I actually think, it's actually good. But I have to say, episode 3 was way better than episode 1 and 2, and there are some huge inexcusable problems with episode 1 and 2, and I think they should have just started with episode 3 as a pilot basically, but whatever. But the problems are really not that diversity nonsense stuff. Like, I think Jeff Holiday pointed it out, really the news media and BuzzFeed and Gizmodo and all these weird sites, they were pushing this diversity stuff way more than the actual show, and CBS actually did. But anyway, let's start at the beginning. So really, I was kind of surprised when it really started out, the first episode, like a Star Trek show, We see the crew really, on science missions and, doing actual exploration and all that stuff. The trailers made it out to be basically like the JJ movies, like some weird action and bam, 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 shoot the bad alien and no quiet moments, just no character stuff, just silly bam, 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 action, fast paced and all that stuff. And it's really not that. There was some action in those 2 first episodes, but there are a lot of quiet moments, a lot of character stuff, a lot of conversations and dialogue, and a little bit even of a positive vision, talking about, just look at the beauty of the universe, look at the beauty of this binary star system and all that stuff, and, helping pre-warp civilizations out, which, a problem in that is, or was for me and for others, that this plot point really was just exposition. The beginning, where they go down to this planet, or where they're at this planet already, it just doesn't play a role in any of the other stuff that happens in the rest of the episode. It was just for exposition. But anyway, it was typical Star Trek, repairing this broken satellite array or whatever. Typical Star Trek. I mean, there was just a lot of quiet moments, a lot of dialogue, a lot of beautiful shots, no fast-paced shaky cam action where you can't even make out what's going on. So it was really good in that sense, but then it just started to trail off, because I have to admit that the main plot, aside from the science stuff and what I just mentioned and all that, the main plot was really just really shallow, if you think about it. Klingon conflict, that's been done a million times in all of the Star Trek series and movies, and many of the plot points just don't make any sense. Just take off my canon hat, if you will, and the fact that the Klingon, it doesn't make sense the way they look, or that the bridge interior design as well as the exterior design of the Shenzhou don't match up and all of this stuff. Just put that aside. Even as a self-contained story, some of the things don't make any sense. Some of the character stuff, some of the decisions the characters make, and it's really just the spotlight on Michael Burnham and Captain Jojo and Lieutenant Saru. We don't really get much other stuff, but some of their decisions are just completely nonsensical and illogical, especially given that Michael Burnham grew up on Vulcan. In that flashback, she seemed to be like totally typical Vulcan, typical emotionless, rational and purely logical, like almost too much. And she's told in the beginning by Captain Jojo that she served like 7 years on the ship, and it's about time for her to, you know, be in command of her own ship, you know. But then the decisions she makes in that episode, first of all, they're totally antithetical to what we see in that flashback and to her being raised as a Vulcan. It's completely antithetical. Like, she's totally overly emotional, overly like mentally unstable even, which even for a normal human being, especially one that was trained for 7 years in a highly militaristic, you know, organization like Starfleet, even for a normal human being, especially for, you know, someone as highly specifically trained like that, wouldn't make any sense. Nonetheless, for a Vulcan, it doesn't make any sense. And again, she basically proves that she's not at all ready to be in command of her own ship. I mean, where did that assessment come from, you know? 7 years, and she seems to be the best on this ship, like one of the best officers ever in Starfleet, and then within that single episode, she proves that she just acts totally irrational. She just acts as if she's never received any training for these kind of situations whatsoever. Like, what? But then again, it fits in, like in the third episode, we mentioned that this was the first mutiny ever on a starship, which ties in with canon, I guess, because there was never any such thing mentioned in the other series. So it's very uncharacteristic of Starfleet, and they really show that in the series, in Star Trek Discovery, that it is really not normal. But couldn't they have picked someone less professional, someone who wasn't trained for 7 years and who is like the best of the best, highly scientific, highly rational, you know, grew up on Vulcan, went through the Vulcan Science Academy? Because for a person like that to make these decisions, it doesn't make any sense at all. Even again, just looking at the story itself, even if you put aside, you know, the canon stuff, even just as a story itself, it doesn't make any sense at all. Honestly, I have to say, in the first 2 episodes, I just figured the series is doomed because they want to focus on Michael exclusively throughout all of the series, but she's just not a likable character. In the 3rd episode, it gets better and she shows remorse. I guess we are supposed to think that about her. It's supposed to be some kind of redemption story by the end of the series. You know, she's redeemed and maybe we are supposed to hate her, but it just didn't seem like an interesting character to me. It just seemed like a highly irrational, illogical, just dumb character if you think about it. You know, especially given that she has all this training, she really supposed to know better, and especially given that she's this Mary Sue character. Like, just because she grew up on Vulcan, now she's super strong, she's super intelligent, she's a military strategist, like she's the best Starfleet officer ever, all of that stuff, and then she makes these kind of decisions, which it's like, you can't fool us, CBS. You can't just say all these things about this character and do all this virtue signaling and then contradict it with the actual actions. Like, you know, actions don't lie. You can say all you want that, I don't know, Joel Osteen is this moral guy, or Jim Baker or whatever is this moral guy. You can say that all you want. If you look at his actions or at their actions, it's immediately clear that they're not. So again, you can't fool us with that. So in that sense, she just wasn't a likable character. And you know, it's the same with Rogue One, for instance. Like in Discovery, the one character that was interesting was Lieutenant Saru. And I see a huge parallel to Rogue One in that, because Saru was, yeah, like a background character. Like, you know, he was a little more in the foreground than the others, but he was still very much a background character. But he was still more interesting, a million times more interesting than that main protagonist that CBS wants us to care about. So you're doing something wrong when audiences find a background character more interesting than the main protagonist that you want us to care about. And it's the same with Rogue One. Like K2SO, Chirrut Imwe, and Blaze or Base or whatever he's called, they were way more interesting than the two main characters that, you know, they just shove in our faces. And see, I can't even remember, yeah, Jyn Erso and, you know, the other guy, I can't remember his name. They're so uninteresting, I only know the name because they say it over and over again. But again, you can say all the stuff all you want if the actions just prove them to be completely the opposite, or if the actions just prove them to be a completely bland and uninteresting character. And the same was just going on in Rogue One. Saru was a way more interesting character than Michael Burnham, which we are supposed to care about. K2SO was a way more interesting character than Jyn Erso, who we are supposed to care about, but we just don't. It's impossible by the way they act and, you know, by the way they're written. So that was a major gripe I had with the episode, you know, just putting aside the canon stuff and all that stuff. So that's all I have to say about that. But still, it wasn't nearly as bad as the trailers made it look, and it actually had me, you know, interested in seeing more. And then episode 3 came around, and again, from the trailers, I was like, oh god, this is typical, like, Netflix drama, typical gritty and dark and violent, action-packed nonsense. The first scene where they're on this shuttle and traversing the storm or whatever, that reminded me of a JJ movie, and I was like, oh god, really? They're on this shuttle, everything's dark, it's shaking, it's dangerous, the atmosphere is bleak and hopeless. We're focusing on Michael Burnham's face, and there are these assholes, like typical macho jibber jabber, like, huh, the mutineer, huh? Millions died because of you, you fucking bitch. Something like that. It was just, oh god, really, again, it reminded me of Cupcake from the first JJ movie. It's that same, you know, typical conflict between basically two macho assholes. And I'm talking about, regardless of gender, there are girls who act like that as well. Just typical macho asshole, you know, just being witty and being a smart ass and just, you know, talking shit, that kind of stuff. And it really seemed very un-Star Trek to me. Even, you know, these were prisoners, yeah, I get they're criminals, but even within the Star Trek utopia, you would expect people to, you know, be more civilized, I guess. I don't know, especially when they're on the Discovery, and the main female officer that we first meet, she also, you know, talks about the prisoners as if they're trash. Yeah, I get that they're criminals, but especially within the utopia of the Federation in the 23rd century, Starfleet wouldn't treat people of any shape or size or form or social class or whatever like that. So there was typical nonsense, just totally didn't fit at all. So that was really a bad start, and I thought, oh my god, this is basically like a JJ movie. But then it was really interesting. Yeah, I thought, okay, the war is so bad and we're so in need of forces that we even let criminals, you know, serve for us. That was typical nonsense that, you know, just wouldn't happen. But then again, whatever, just let that one slide. But then it started to get interesting. I really love Captain Lorca. I first thought, oh, he's another one of these macho assholes, but no, they play with that trope because they give him a reason why he is in shadow, and he himself makes fun of that trope. He says like, well, I think it makes me mysterious, doesn't it? Well, then maybe not. So he's more of a, you know, he acts like a hard-ass, smart-ass, typical macho asshole a little bit. Like, you know, for instance, like the Admiral from Star Trek Into Darkness. But he only does it to make fun of that kind of persona, that kind of attitude. And he's actually, I think he's a humorous guy, and He's good at heart. I think he's more like Captain Sisko, mixed maybe with a little bit of Captain Archer from season 3, Enterprise season 3, when he starts to get a little more, violent, but he's sort of a no-nonsense, ignore the rules, do what needs to be done, even if it breaks the rules. But he's also humorous, and yeah, I think he's cool, he's interesting. And then again, in that episode, I think Michael Burnham is more interesting because she shows remorse, she opens up a little bit. We meet Sylvia Tilly, who is extremely annoying, but she's annoying, but that's what we are supposed to think about her. So it's really annoying, but written in a good way. It's supposed to be written that way. Michael Burnham at one point apologizes to her and opens up and shows some remorse, shows some feelings, and I think that was fun. There were some fun moments, like when she lays on Sylvia Tilly's bed and all that stuff, and there were some lighthearted moments, which is something that was deeply missing, I think. And while I still think that even in the first 2 episodes I really loved the chemistry between Michael and Saru, some pointed out that it seemed forced and all this stuff. I don't know about that. Maybe it's because I watched it in German, so it really didn't feel forced to me. And I think that Saru profoundly reminds me of Data in every sense of the word, in the way he talks, what he says, his choice of words, what he blurts out, what he points out, what he chooses to say, what information he's choosing to give to the rest of the characters, his back and forth banter, his maybe not understanding humans, and having his very, unique character. For instance, like, what are we looking at? An object of unknown origin. Can't you be a little more precise? Something like that. That was funny. That's something that Data would say. It's just the best explanation, he can give at that moment. But some pointed out that it seemed forced. I don't know about that. But in episode 3, you really see, okay, the dialogue that Michael and Saru have, it looks more like, yeah, they have actually served 7 years or whatever. So that was cool. And again, the dialogue between Michael and Tilly was also cool. There were some lighthearted moments, like with the Klingon. There were some quiet moments. There was also some bullshit stuff, like the fight scene in the mess hall, which the mess hall I like. Yeah, the mess hall itself, the set, is, very TOS, a little NXy. It's very cool. I think just modernized a little bit. Just from the set design, it's pushing a little more towards TOS than the Shenzhou, There were some buttons, like some colorful see-through buttons and control panels, and, the sound design, of course, that was something that episode 1 and 2 did also, but just the general layout of some consoles. The data disk, the card, was exactly like in TOS, just a yellow square, just like in TOS, just a little modernized. That was really cool. But going back to the cantina, the mess hall, the fight scene was bullshit. Come on. They excuse it by saying that she was trained in Vulcan martial arts. Just cut that shit out. Yeah, we get it. She's perfect. She's super intelligent. She's super strong and all that stuff. Just come on. She's way thinner, way smaller than each of these guys. She couldn't even take one of them out. Let's be honest. Even if she was trained in these martial arts, let alone, 3 guys. That's just highly unlikely, but whatever. There was still some lighthearted moments. The overall plot felt a little, I don't know, I feel kind of conflicted, because on the one hand, yeah, it reminded me of Alien or some sci-fi horror, like that one movie, God damn it, what's it called? The one where they basically use the dark matter portal to go to hell or whatever. Can't remember what it's called. Or also Sunshine, it reminded me a little bit of that. But then again, it also was typical Star Trek. Like, how many times did TOS, TNG, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, etc., how many times did they do that typical we're beaming over to that ship and we don't know what's going on. The crew is lost or dead, or the power is off, or the ship is totally broken, totally wasted, totally destroyed, like debris everywhere and all that stuff. The computer is malfunctioning. How many times did that happen? It was your typical monster of the week episode, or even the typical problem to solve of the week that occurs in the beginning of the episode and then is solved by the end of the episode. Like, it was your typical paranormal, mystical, we don't know what's going on, weird thing. How many episodes are there where crew members, are influenced by some strange being or force or some unknown drug or something in the air or in the water, or a crew member or the whole crew goes crazy, or some being controls them, some alien controls them, and they don't know what to do or they don't even know what's happening. Like the episode in Voyager where that gas life form takes over the computer and basically the whole ship and all that stuff, especially given the fact that they go over to the USS Glenn, which is the sister ship of the USS Discovery. That's basically the same as in that episode in TOS where they beam over to the Defiant, and it's also the same. They don't know what's going on, weird things are happening, the crew is dead. It's basically the same, especially given that the Defiant is also a sister ship of the Enterprise. So in that sense, it's very TOS, very Star Trek, beaming over to a sister ship and encountering strange phenomena and you don't know what's going on. It's basically the same. So yeah, in that sense, it was very Star Trek, I like that the series seems to be less serialized than the trailers made it out to be. Like the Klingon stuff was very much in the background. I thought, we're only gonna see the war now. No, we have a self-contained story in that episode here that is very much, monster of the week, mystery of the week, basically. That was very Star Trek, I think. I really liked that, but then again, at the end, we see that Lorca basically engineered all that stuff, and I don't get what that plot point with the beast, the monster, the animal, whatever, is even just why. That USS Glenn accident was something to do with the scientific experiments that they did, but what is this animal doing there? I didn't really get it, and why did Lorca put it there, I get that they are supposed to investigate what happened there, but just endangering your own crew by putting this animal there when it actually has nothing to do with what they encountered, what actually happened to the crew, I don't really get. Why would you scare your crew on purpose, If you just want to find out what happened there, just let them investigate. I don't really get it, but whatever. But I still like Lorca, and I like his weird torture chamber. There's a Cardassian rat lying on the table. There's a skeleton of a Gorn. That was really cool. And in general, there was some nice tie-ins to TOS. And I have to say, the Discovery itself looks really cool. It's made to look very cool. Very good CGI, very cool beauty shots, very nice perspectives and camera angles just in front of these beautiful landscapes. And the design itself, like after they refitted it basically from that one design that was shown on Comic-Con that was really clunky and had really bad CGI. After they refitted it to what it is now, I really like it. It's a really beautiful ship. When they first go into the shuttle bay, there are some shots that are very TOS with the row of windows and all of that stuff. And again, it could fit in with TOS. You could retcon it. So that's really cool. So overall, I'm really excited. I really liked that episode. Way better than the first two. Yeah. I really like Saru, I really like Lorca. In general, I like that it's more character-based. There are some quiet moments. There are some exploration moments. Honestly, I don't really buy the Spore drive. As we know, the fact that it didn't appear in any other series, it will fail anyway. In all of the other series, they have the normal, quote-unquote, warp drive. So it will fail anyway, so what's the point? But whatever. At least it was something interesting, something less gritty and dark or whatever. Even though Lorca probably wants to use it as a weapon as well, but he also wants to use it as a new propulsion system. So that's really Star Trek, I think. Very science-y and all that stuff. So I really like that. I really like the science stuff. I really like the quiet moments. I like the character stuff. I like Michael Burnham better than I liked her in the first 2 episodes. Yeah, I like that it was a self-contained story and less serialized than what I expected. Yeah, really excited to see more. Thank you very much for listening. Peace the fuck out. Hey, this is being recorded later since episode 4 just came out, and I figured, shit, now I just have to give my 2 cents on it. Otherwise it would be just, useless to release a review of the first 3 episodes when episode 3 is already 2 weeks old and there's already been hundreds of reviewers that have given their 2 cents on it. But anyway, upon initially watching the episode, the butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's cry, or how it's called, I don't know. Very TOS like titles they're using, very philosophical and poetic or whatever. Upon first watching it, I thought, damn, this is even better than the previous episode. They're really only improving. Really good story, really interesting moral dilemma, very Star Trek-y, a little bit of action here and there, a little drama, but yeah, very cool. But then after, seeing a few reviews and stuff, I realized, okay, maybe it's not that great. I mean, it's still very good, and I would still say it's better than the previous episode and the first and the second episode, but yeah, there are some problems with it, obviously. For instance, I still don't buy the spore drive, to be honest, especially after seeing it in action and seeing that the saucer section rotates, which according to one commenter is what Gene Roddenberry does in his grave, what Gene Roddenberry would have done in his grave after seeing this, because it just feels like this idea came from people that just have never seen Star Trek, who have no idea how the technological specifics of the warp drive works. Yeah, it's science fiction and stuff, it's fictional, it's not real technology, but there's still a lore behind it that you just have to respect. And in all the episodes, they are clearly in the engineering room or somewhere near it, which is in the back part of the secondary hull. So what the fuck does the saucer section have to do with that? I mean, yeah, sure, only the top part rotates, but still, what does the saucer section, which is like at the complete other, like, I don't know, I mean, doesn't the spore drive somehow, if they're in the engineering room, does it somehow interact with the warp nacelles? But even if it doesn't, when they're in the engineering room, which is again at the back part of the ship, what does it have to do with the secondary hull? I think that's just probably something like, I can see the day in the writer's room where some guy or gal said, hey, why don't we make this thing rotate? It looks cool. I mean, the ship looks like a pizza cutter anyway. So it's just like, without any respect to how the warp drive works, how the impulse drive works, etc. That's just whatever. But still, I really like the central theme of the episode, which is, again, like in the previous episode, I mean, it is a continuation of the previous storyline, but they explore this creature further and stuff, blah blah blah. And by the way, it's interesting that many people have thought, and I too, that they would keep the fact that Lorca has this beast, this monster on board, hidden for the rest of the season at least. But no, they surprised me with that they reveal that to Michael Burnham already in this episode. But again, it's a continuation of that storyline. They explore this monster further. And what's interesting is many people have speculated, hey, this looks like a tardigrade, this beast. And in this episode, they actually confirm it. So yeah, that was kind of a cool idea. And I don't really know if that was even explained, but I don't know how this tardigrade got that big, or if it even was small at one point, or if it always was this big, or if it had to do with some of the experiments on the Glen and feeding upon the spores or whatever made it that big, a very fast mutation or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, it's still a cool idea. I like the science stuff. I like the fact that in the end, basically in this episode, science and curiosity and even the faith, the belief in the goodwill, if you will, of other living creatures triumphs over war in this episode. You know, because Lorca and Landry just see the beast as a monster, as a beast, but Burnham is more skeptical, and that's very Star Trek. I mean, how many times did the Enterprise encounter beings that they thought weren't even living beings, and that they thought that's just an energy source that we can use, or you know, they were just misunderstood and that they thought, hey, this is an evil being that's just aggressive and just attacked us for no reason, only to then find out that it's only been defending itself, like the Hoarder in TOS, or like the little crystalline beings in Next Generation that weren't recognized as living organisms in the first place because they were so different and we couldn't communicate with them. But then later they found out that the pattern of their light signal was them trying to communicate, and then they managed to translate it. So it's a very Star Trek-y theme of the misunderstood beast, the misunderstood living organism that turns out to not be an evil monster or whatever. And it ended upon the moral dilemma of, should we do harm to this living being if it's for the greater good, if maybe lives can be saved in the war in this case. And that's also very Star Trek-y. It's basically the same like in that Voyager episode with Captain Rudy Ransom, yeah, very, very cool name, where they use these interdimensional beings and basically squeeze them out, take their energy, whatever, in order to fuel the warp drive, just so they can get home. It's basically the same as in this Discovery episode. And I guess they're gonna explore this further. I guess that could be the reason why we don't see the spore drive in later iterations of Star Trek, because it's being shut down due to animal cruelty, you know? But anyway, that's very cool. Like I said, very interesting moral quandary, and that's always been at the heart of Star Trek. I also like Michael Burnham in this even more. I'm starting to really like her, honestly, with her struggling with opening the inheritance of Captain Georgiou, and also with her being the only one that wants to do science and doesn't see the creature as merely a monster or as merely a danger or whatever. Again, that was very Star Trek-y. And spoiler alert, Landry, the character whom I previously complained about, dies in this episode, and I'm not the least bit sorry for it. I mean, they set it up basically to be a deserved death, if you will. In this show, stupid actions really have consequences, as with Michael Burnham and as with Landry now. Like, she didn't at all check whether the anesthetic really took effect onto the being, and then she just deactivated the force field and of course was attacked by the tardigrade. Burnham said before that this is a stupid idea, but she did it anyway. So and then Burnham was smart and, you know, turned down the lights, blah blah blah, or turned up the lights, because this being doesn't really like light, in order for this being to go back into its room. And that was really interesting because I complained previously about the writers saying all the time that Michael Burnham is super strong and super smart, blah, 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 but they never show it. In this episode, they actually show it. They actually show Burnham making good, intelligent decisions. So yeah, that was really cool. Again, she does science. She wants to do science. She finally shows some emotion, some compassion, some empathy with the being. She's the only one who understands the being. That was really cool. And again, it was a typical Monster of the Week episode. Mystery of the Week. What is this being? What does it want? How does it operate? What does it have to do with the spores? It was cool how it interacts with the spores, and I still don't know if I buy that, but it was a cool concept, I have to admit. And again, it ended upon this typical animal cruelty moral issue, which again is at the heart of Star Trek. And like the previous episodes, like I said, there were a lot of quiet moments, a lot of character development. The dialogue between Burnham and Saru was cool. Again, I like Burnham more and more. I still like Saru. I like that Landry's dead. I still like Captain Lorca. I've come to love the engineer. I forgot his name. The gay guy. Hey, faggot. Because I just love his facial expressions and his skeptical face, him squinting his eyes and him saying, huh. It reminds me of Odo from Deep Space Nine or of Wilson from Dr. House or someone like that, you know? A skeptical, no nonsense, doesn't, understand fun or doesn't have that much humor kind of guy. I love that. I would almost suggest for anyone who's still not sure whether to watch it, start with this episode or with the previous one. Skip the pilot. The pilot is just, garbage. Oh, and also we finally get some references to Klingon canon. I mean, the Klingons still are so far away from what they should be, how they act, etc., and how they look. I mean, in that one shot with the albino guy and the woman, Klingon, I don't know her name, where they're seen in profile standing before the stellar chart, whatever. Nothing in that makeup says Klingon to me. But whatever. But still, I like the fact that we see, okay, these ships are actually supposed to be birds of prey, even though they look, I don't know, they look a little bit like the original Bird of Prey. I don't know. I guess you can kind of see it. You can kind of see a similarity. But the Bird of Prey and in general the Klingon ships, the Klingon ship design is supposed to look dirty and gritty and put together by different parts and full of greebles and pipes and rectangles and shapes and it's supposed to look old and worn out and assembled together and all that stuff. And this kind of Bird of Prey in Discovery doesn't look like that at all. That other Klingon ship where the guy in the beginning beams on board the sarcophagus ship, that ship looked vaguely Klingon. It looked like something to be seen in Enterprise. That was really cool. And I also thought that his costume looked vaguely Klingon, at least more than the other costumes. That was cool. You could kind of see how that would fit in with the traditional Klingon design. But yeah, I don't know. On the one hand, you finally see them like eat and drink blood wine and all that stuff. Because Klingons are supposed to be that way. Klingons are supposed to be a mixture between Vikings and bikers. They're not supposed to be these solemn religious fundamentalists who talk about Kahless all the time and are quiet and are cheering their leaders and are praying and all that stuff. No, they're supposed to be angry and wild and having fun and drinking and beating each other up and all that stuff. And we can see a little bit of that in this episode finally, but still, I don't know, man. The overall aesthetics of the ship and of the costumes and the guy being left to die on the Shenzhou, I mean, what? How did the other guy take control of the sarcophagus ship so quickly? And T'Kuvma unified all the 24 houses, and then they just left the ship to die there in empty space, and no one came to check on it, not even the Federation. They managed to get the telescope from the Shenzhou, but they didn't check upon the Klingons. What the hell, man? It just doesn't make any sense. The Klingon parts in this episode are just full of plot holes. I'd rather they just let that be. And really, these Klingons are the most un-Klingon thing in all of Star Trek. Also with them kneeling before each other. The writers don't understand Klingon culture. I really think that. Even the Klingons from Into Darkness were better. And even in 2009, we see your traditional Klingon, I think D7 design. So even J.J. Abrams respects the traditional Klingon design. Why doesn't fucking CBS? Why doesn't Discovery, which is supposed to be in the prime timeline? So that really pisses me off a little bit. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna stop it here. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.